Hello and welcome, and thank you for your interest in the Silicon Kids of the 70s project. My name is Hillary Meehan, and I'm the project archivist and point person. I'm also a Silicon Kid of the 70s. I've initiated this project, I call it SK70s Project for short, in my role as a graduate student in the Master of Library and Information Science program at San Jose State University in California. Here I'd like to take a moment to thank Dr. Ben Alexander, my community archives professor and project advisor, for guiding and supporting me in this endeavor. You can see here the project mission. The purpose of the project is to build a sustainable, standards-informed archival community collection that represents the diverse voices of people who were children in Silicon Valley between the years 1970 and 1980. SK70s collects and preserves participants' memories of their childhood in an online digital repository so as to promote broad and equitable representation and access to researchers and to assure long-term preservations of the diverse recollections. We're doing this so that our voices are heard and maintained as part of the comprehensive historical. I'll tell you what, finding an inclusive geographical representation of Silicon Valley is challenging. As you can see here, the cultural historian and map researcher Daniel Brownstein says in his blog Musing on Maps, which I highly recommend, Silicon Valley is not located on a proper map. Silicon Valley is a place, but also a conceptual space demanding mapping against its actual configuration. In my search for a good map, I would say this has proven to be literally true. Therefore, for the purposes of this project, Silicon Valley is defined as the Santa Clara Valley and other geographical areas identified by this map you see here. Who are the kids of Silicon Valley 1970s? We come from all walks of life. Our only or primary point of convergence is that we were all kids in that place and time. Probably like me, we were all just being kids. We come from a variety of backgrounds. We have a variety of identities. And we may or may not have had direct links or obvious links to the technological revolution that was taking place in Silicon Valley in the 70s, but it was impossible for us to avoid the influences of that culture. Before we go further, I want to point out, for the purposes of this project, that the terms cultural inclusivity, representation, and diversity denote inclusion of all cultural and racial identities, all sexual orientations, all gender identities, all socioeconomic levels, and all educational levels. A key aim of SK70s is to include cultural identities that are excluded, marginalized, and otherwise absent from the mainstream narratives of Silicon Valley and of society as a whole. Additionally, I may refer to the project as a memory project or a community archives. I use these terms interchangeably with the intention of conveying the mission and values of the SK70s project. We are collecting contributor recorded memories and preserving them as a digital community archives. But we're more than that. We serve as an outlet of expression for voices absent from the mainstream narrative of that time and place, and we aim to empower and engage in culturally sensitive and appropriate ways all peoples. By doing the archival work, we intend to create points of effective connection, remembrance, context, identity, and empathy for ourselves and each other, and to find new and meaningful ways to engage with each other as a community. What do you think childhood was like in Silicon Valley in the 70s? Take a moment to think about it. Here are my answers to these questions. I think about all the fun I had as a kid living in San Mateo, San Jose, San Francisco, and Redwood City. In retrospect, now I think about how culturally diverse my neighborhoods and neighbors were, and how easily we all just seemed to get along completely. When I imagine childhood in Silicon Valley, I see what I saw, which was a mosaic of genders and races and cultures and religions and sexual orientation. As a child, I did not question the validity of this. It's just how it was. It was free of judgment, at least in my perspective. And also for me, when I think about that time as a child, I think we had all the best stuff. We had vinyl 45s and 8-tracks and Mad Magazine and Schoolhouse Rock. We had Saturday morning cartoons and Pong, banana seat bikes and big wheels, Soul Train and Free to Be You and Me, but Evel Knievel and the $6 Million Man. To our everlasting delight, we witnessed the first screening of Star Wars in 1977. It was the first test screening. It was in San Francisco. As a kid, those are the things I was thinking about, and I loved it. And yes, I am a Silicon kid of the 70s. Are you? Do you know someone that is? But how does the world see Silicon Valley in general? The existing historical record of Silicon Valley in the 70s and in later decades exclusively represents adult white men and prohibits the voices of women, blacks, Hispanics, and so many others. Attempting to access the diverse voices living in that the place and time is a virtually impossible task. I tried it. And the voices of children at that time are entirely absent from the record. A quick Google search for Silicon Valley results in one thing and one thing only: the origin myth. White men of the tech revolution, the garage, the club, the man, the legend. This book was published in 2019. I read it for class, and I was surprised. It was through reading this book I reconnected with my childhood in Silicon Valley between 1970 and 1980. I reconnected with it not because I felt represented by the information it provided, but because I made my first real connection as an adult between my life then and the full social environment I lived in. And also, I did not see myself in this story. I was absent from the narrative, but I knew I was there. I have memories of my life at that time in that place, and I was a child absorbing everything around me. I believe it was there and then that my personal orientation to the world, my values were formed, the ones that I still have now. Where am I in this story? I thought. This is important. I threw this in here because it seemed remiss not to include it since it is a serious part of mainstream culture. I have never seen this show, but anyone I talk to about Silicon Valley brings it up. Let's take a moment now to talk about the existing historical narrative of Silicon Valley. Here you can watch a couple-minute clip from the American Experience PBS documentary Silicon Valley, which is very good. It is also an excellent example of the Silicon Valley origin myth. The lack of diverse representation in this clip highlights the absence of non-white, non-male, non-adult community members. It is the only story you're going to get without trying really, really hard. And even then, probably you won't find much about anybody but these people. As a student and practitioner of inclusivity and diverse representation, I am a fan of the aphorism, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Logically, we know that a mosaic of cultural identities were represented then and are represented now by the population of Silicon Valley. I may not have been drinking with those felons at the wagon wheel because I was 6, but the kids of that time were being raised by those guys. Their lifestyles absolutely and directly informed ours. I'd like to make a note about this wonderful image that I have in this slide. I really do like it, but I would not have used it if I could have found an actual image of a diverse group of people gathered together in Silicon Valley. I just couldn't. So who is a member of the SK70 community? It's pretty broad. all people of all identities who as children lived in the geographical region of Silicon Valley between the years 1970 and 1980. I'm sure we all have that now. Those communities currently underrepresented or unrepresented in the existing Silicon Valley historical record and narrative, with a specific focus on girls, marginalized racial groups, including indigenous people and immigrants, and all cultural and gender identities and sexual orientations. At this time, it is appropriate to acknowledge and honor the traditional peoples, the residents, the original residents of the Silicon Valley region, the Tamian, Ohlone, and Muwekma peoples. Forgive me. The SK70s project sees you, values you, and invites you to share your priceless memories of childhood in the 70s with us. Thank you. So now we're getting down to the nuts and bolts. These are our project values. In sum, representation in the historical record and social narrative is a human right, and SK70's project values that. We also value and note that dominant culture controls the narrative and intentionally excludes the voices of non-dominant communities. We don't really value that, actually. We are aware of it. Community-initiated projects and archives strengthen society as a whole. Silicon kids of the 70s are real people, and it's time we proclaim our place in the story. And cultural safety is the preeminent value of SK70s. If anyone experiences a lack of cultural safety while engaging with any aspect of the project, we ask respectfully that you tell us so that we may address it and return the environment to a culturally safe space. To maintain long-term preservation and access to project archives, we adhere to industry standards for technologies and practices. This is one of our project policies. Additionally, privacy will be respected and protected as per law and the limitations of the Freedom of Information Acts. We will post our policies and make them available so that any stakeholder will have access to that information and be made aware of how those policies and laws may affect them. Confidentiality in this situation is a complicated matter, a little bit. Therefore, as a community archives, we value cultural safety and also value broad and equitable access to collection materials. So in order to maintain cultural and individual safety, we have decided that we will respect all requests from contributors to restricted access to their content. We want people to share their memories, even if they're not comfortable immediately having those memories made immediately accessible to the public. We get that. These graphs are from 2019 and developed from U.S. Census Bureau information. I thought they were just really good representations of the truth. See, there are a lot of white people in Silicon Valley, but there's not only white people. So let's make this story represent all of us. A repeat performer. This slide is a reminder of the historical truth of Silicon Valley. Here we are. It took some mental acrobats for me to figure out what keywords to use when Googling for images of diversity and community in Silicon Valley. These are two images that I did find, and despite the overall dearth of evidence, I'm really pretty pleased with these. This was one of them, We the People, a Unity March for Systemic Change, just happened a month ago. I found it on a Chinese community or culture community center online, events board. And then this article here, which was, I do believe, from the New York Times, from 2019, of a bunch of kids banding together in protest, saying, wake up, change is coming whether you like it or not. The climate problem is real. So if you are going to try to conduct a a Google search or a browser search for cultural diversity in Silicon Valley, I really recommend you use, instead of using the word Silicon Valley, at least right now, maybe that will change when we get our archives functioning, use neighborhood, county, or cultural identity related words instead. All right, so as we know, we're everywhere. Silicon kids of the 70s, we're all in our 50s now at the very least. So to engage actively with them means that we have to develop a robust online identity, project identity, and presence, and use that as a vehicle for connecting and collecting memories. So we're prepared for this challenge. We have a website with a blog, we have a social media presence, we have a YouTube channel, and a SoundCloud channel. This is a snapshot or a screenshot of our WordPress website. This is the landing page. This is the access point through which researchers get to the content and contributors can share it. The site's still in process. This is a chart I made to try to describe and explain the process of what technologies and software we need specifically to appropriately maintain this collection for the long term, because it involves several steps. Basically, we need a website to be the public-facing access point for content and to share content. When content is uploaded to or sent to contributed to the project, it is stored in the cloud, and then it is transferred, usually as a batch of memories, but can be done individually, to a web-based standards-compliant archival processing software called Archivematica. And this is where description and format information is added, to, dates, names, regions, those kinds of things, to improve searchability for when people want to try to access memories about specific things and ideas. And it's then prepared here to go into an actual digital repository or archives where it's stored and securely stored for the long term. And then that is the site, the A2M, Access to Memory, that connects with the website or the WordPress website for the project, and links there so that people can access it, but it's still stored securely. I'm not sure I said that well, but I think the diagram just explains it pretty well. I've done some research, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, into costs. And actually, Archivematica and A2M are very well respected, open source, free, web-based software platforms specifically made to store archival content. All right, how to share the memories. So I'm gonna, in a few minutes, I'm gonna explain how memory holders can go about recording and sharing their memories with SK70. But first, here's my own example. My name is Hillary. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. It was pretty fun to make. It was much easier than I expected. Um, Here are the templates that are on the website and that I've developed for people to contribute their memories and directions, basically how to do it, how to shape their memory, how to record it, and how to share it with the project. So this first page is basically the waiver. It's the spoken waiver that contributors are asked to read at the beginning of their recording. Having done this, and you just heard me do it, it is somewhat onerous, and I'm open to shortening it or changing it so that it's a little more time efficient. However, it is the waiver of rights and understanding of our legal position and ownership of the recording. It's generally based off the oral history recordings instructions that the Queen's Memory Project uses. And I would like to stop here for just a moment and thank Queen's Memory Project for creating a website that has been a vehicle of inspiration and a role model to other community advocates, to me and other community advocates, I'm sure. Thanks, Queen's Memory Project. So this is, suggestions for shaping the memory. Just basically a series of prompts, like what is the first thing that pops into your head when you think about your childhood? Do you have a photo or an object that reminds you of that time and can help you connect with a specific memory? Talk with other people you grew up with or your family members. You can also, another way of approaching this memory collection project is to interview someone else and record them on their behalf. That would be a wonderful way, direction to take it in, and I think students and young people connecting with older people in the community is vital and a lovely way to engage across generations. These are the specific directions for recording your memory. And it's just really basically step by step. It's about formatting and apps and how to share it and what we'll say and if we'll send you a thank you note and all that stuff. And I have gone through the process and it works. I have some concerns around technology, but I will bring those up at the end. So this is the project budget. On the left, it's just sort of the consolidated primary category budgets items. The total for the first year of expense items, what it will all cost is about $7,820. On the right, I've broken those things out. I researched the cost of all of these items 4 days ago, and so I know that these are legitimate expressions of the costs. It's recommended that an archives have a dedicated wired computer, so my laptop may not be the most secure storage point, an access point for the repository and place to do all my work. So I think that is a very legitimate expense. There's, the hard drive to do an external hard drive for backup purposes, the cost of the domain and Ethernet connection, security, privacy, malware, and virus protection, small printing budget, and then travel for me, the project archivist and point person, because I don't live in that region anymore. I actually live in Portland, Oregon. So this is 2 visits in 1 calendar year to go down there and directly engage with community members, network, build connections. Fundraising for community-based archives projects are complicated because the impetus for seeking support has to come from within the community itself and represent the values of that community. The tech industry of Silicon Valley has systematically excluded so many of us. Collaborating with them will require community input negotiation. Or in keeping with their history, maybe they won't see a reason to collaborate with us. Instead, SK70s chooses to prioritize individual donations in our fundraising strategy. Building on the model outlined by Project Gatto's Tom Smith, SK70s will initiate a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign and early on solicit, at the very least, a handful of sizable individual donations to seed the pot and get the ball rolling. As Smith notes, people like to see that a project already has support when they are considering making a individual donation themselves. Developing relationships with the individual community leaders will be a priority in fundraising, among other areas, and will be enhanced with face-to-face networking by the archivist point person, me. Additionally, we're going to research grant makers that align with project values, and this will likely involve applying for and gaining 501c3 nonprofit status. Fortunately, I have years of experience working for nonprofits as a grant writer, so that does not seem in any way insurmountable for the project. Fortunately for SK70s, there are just too many like-minded community groups and organizations in the Silicon Valley region. Too many, in fact, to list here. I've just put in a couple really great examples, or several really great examples. There were two people that stood out as possible SK70s partners. Kathy Cotton. Actually, here you go. Kathy Cotton is a digital storyteller and community advocate, and Henry Lowood, who's from Stanford University Libraries. He's a curator there. These two worked together recently, well, in the past several years, to bring about the creation of the soon-to-open History of African American History. History of African Americans in Silicon Valley at Stanford University Libraries. This is the article. One of the articles that Stanford put out about this project on February 11th in 2021, this year. You can click on it if you want to read the full article. Strategies for engagement and involvement. Here's a fairly comprehensive list, but basically, go to the places where people live, build trust, collaborate with schools and teachers to engage students in oral history projects and community presentations, distribute rack cards, go door to door and hang door hangers, give out pins, buttons, stickers, and t-shirts. They can be expensive. However, short runs and strategic distribution of those items can heighten visibility and spur interest very spontaneously. Also, these items, communication should be available in many languages, and transcriptions should be available as well. I'm sorry, I want to point out also that I've looked into transcription and translation services, and San Jose State University Library, the King Library there, has in place services that do just that. So that would be a fantastic way to partner with an institution of higher learning and get support services that are already in place. Infrastructure is a great donation. Volunteers, the best. Sharing memories, accessing and experiencing memories, coordinating and implementing story sharing and recording events, promoting the project within their own communities, empowering students to create oral history projects. Volunteers are community liaisons for SK70s. As previously highlighted, teachers will be a specifically targeted group of volunteers in hopes that they will engage their students in collecting and creatively presenting oral histories. Education is what makes the world go round. Here are a few grant-making organizations under consideration. There are quite a few, though these seemed of particular interest. They have differing deadlines, so some can and can't be applied for within this calendar or fiscal year, but I'll keep on top of that. And at this point in project implementation, my number one goal for us is to develop a community-based advisory board. This is a top priority. So far, it's just me and my faculty advisor, Dr. Alexander. And while I do represent that community, the Silicon Kids of the 70s community, I would very much like to get out there and connect with people. and build real time and real world connections and friendships and launch this project and in support of the value of representing an inclusive mosaic of who we really are. Whew. All right. So thank you for your time and interest in the and patience with me in the Silicon Kids of the 70s project. Please feel free to contact me if you need any more information. Again, my name is Hillary. I'm the archivist and point person for this SK70s project. And here is my email address. Thank you very much. I'll leave this screen up, and then in a few minutes, if you'd like, you can just click forward and see a reference list of resources and information if there's anything you want to investigate further. Thanks for your time.